All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. I know we'll be seeing a few other people join, but I just want to start by welcoming everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to bring to you this final webinar in our series for this month of newborn screening awareness. And we've definitely enjoyed being able to reflect on the past, present, and future in our first webinar, and to celebrate our Grace Award winners in our second webinar. And in this final webinar, we're so thrilled to have two of the families that we work closely with here to share us a little bit more about their experiences in newborn screening as family leaders, and to really help us think about what it means to engage in the newborn screening system and how we can continue our efforts that we've also so much invested in over this last month of September, and carry that through to improve and increase awareness for newborn screening beyond just this month. So I will introduce Liz and Jessica in just a moment, but we're so excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us. For those that may not know me already, my name is Mariana Rea, and I'm the Associate Director of Programs at Expecting Health, and work closely on one of our newborn screening programs that I'll be sharing a little bit more with you about later on in the webinar. So with that, we wanted to just highlight a little bit of our objectives today and what we hope to cover through the experiences and sharing that we'll have with Liz and Jessica. So first and foremost, as we think about engaging with the newborn screening system and what that really truly means for families, we're going to first hear a little bit more about the importance of connecting through Jessica's experience, and really what it means to connect with other families and connect at the local level, and understanding the importance of that. We're also going to spend some time talking a little bit about the importance of sharing experiences, and specifically for families to share their stories, the different groups of people that sharing your story is important to think about, and how sharing your story can really impact family experiences in newborn screening. And last, but certainly not least, again, we want to talk about what it looks like to continue building our efforts to raise awareness for newborn screening beyond the month of September. So before we jump in and I introduce Liz and Jessica, wanted to share some interesting takeaways. We recently asked a group of family leaders what it really means to them to lead within the newborn screening system. And I think this really highlights the importance of what we're going to be talking about today, from connecting to really sharing stories and to building efforts and unifying efforts across the system. So, we heard things like it means getting connected to your medical team and asking questions, ensuring that you're connected with other families. It's keeping an eye out for opportunities to try new approaches. It's knowledge, understanding and having knowledge really empowers families to get engaged. It's other things like engaging with families to learn about their experiences so you don't feel alone, and really learning from the experiences of other people. It looks like always advocating for your child. And again, that connection piece, it looks like connecting right away with advocacy groups and other organizations that really understand and can support the needs of families as they're navigating through a newborn screening journey. So we're going to dig in over the next 45 minutes or so to really learn from two families' experiences of what that really means to lead and engage within the newborn screening system. But before we do that, we wanted to just get an idea of who is joining us today. So we are going to ask you to take just a moment or two to respond to the several poll questions that hopefully you can all see on your screen now. And we'll share a little bit about who's in the audience once we close this poll. But if you could just take a moment to share which category do you most closely identify with, and what kind of perspective you're bringing to the discussion, and help us understand what you're hoping to get out of this webinar. We definitely want to make sure that we're providing helpful and helpful information and empowering you with knowledge as well. Can we go ahead and share those? Are they? Yeah. Okay, great. So it looks like we have quite a variety of people in the audience, which is wonderful. It looks like we do have some parents, and we have a number of representatives from state screening programs, which is great. We welcome our partners in that. And then some advocacy organization representatives as well, and some industry representatives. So really great to have everybody here. And it definitely looks like we have a number of people who are here to listen and learn, which is exactly what we would like to be able to do for you all, and definitely want to share some specific solutions. So hopefully at the end of this, you're walking away with some tangible next steps that you can take as families or as opportunities to share with the families that you work with. So thanks for taking a moment to share that. So let's jump in, and I am thrilled to introduce to you two of the families, like I mentioned earlier, that we work so closely with. Ms. Jessica Biggerstaff is here today and is the parent of a child who was diagnosed through newborn screening with spinal muscular atrophy. And Miss Elizabeth Carter, Miss Liz Carter, is here as well, and is a parent of a child who was diagnosed with homocystinuria, not initially through newborn screening. And both of these women have been integral into some of the work that we've been doing through the Navigate Newborn Screening Program to really help and build out some of our ambassador work and ambassador program work that I'll be sharing in just a moment. But these two ladies have had a number of experiences and a wealth of knowledge to really think about and share with you all some very practical tips and advice on engaging as family leaders within the newborn screening system. So thank you both for sharing your experiences with that. We're going to start by first having a conversation with Jessica. And to introduce Jessica, I wanted to first just share a quote that Jessica recently shared with us. And I think it really highlights her journey so far and where she's been through newborn screening, but also the importance of what's to come. So I will read this and then we'll jump into some questions with Jessica. So the words I'll never forget were, "Your son tested positive for SMA on his newborn screening, and without treatment, most babies do not live past 8 to 18 months. I just sat there in disbelief. There are currently 3 FDA-approved treatments for SMA. We chose the world's one-time, most expensive $2.1 million infusion that took an hour to enter the body. Waylon has come such a long way, and we continue to see progress daily, but our future is still so unknown. Treatments are currently changing the natural history of SMA, and newborn screening is making it possible for babies with this disease to receive treatment prior to showing any symptoms, in turn meeting milestones like never before," which to me is breathtaking. So with that, welcome, Jessica. And we wanted to just kick things off with you. Maybe could you just tell us a little bit about your journey with newborn screening and a little bit about Waylon's story?
Yes, thanks, Mariana, for having me. So I was unaware of what newborn screening even was until we received his diagnosis 24 hours after actually being home from the hospital. We got a call from a geneticist that lived, or not lived, but her clinic was about an hour and a half away, and she had let us know that our son was tested for over 50 things on his newborn screening, and one of them came back positive. And we both immediately, his dad and I, were like, what? Like, because I had genetic testing done when I was pregnant, so we were beyond confused to why we weren't aware of this. And she had let us know that in order to have known about this prior birth, we would have had to have carrier testing done as well, which again, we never knew that existed. I thought, hey, I'm getting my genetic testing done, came back low risk, thought everything was fine. And she let us know that we both had to be carriers in order to pass this on to our child. We had a 1 in 4 chance of either having a child with nothing, or passing it on, or the child just being a carrier, and we passed it on. So that itself was very, I can't even describe it. Just, not being prepared, not only being home for 24 hours before we were, being told that our child was diagnosed with this devastating disease that there recently was just treatment 4 or 5 years ago when it came out. So, and for those that don't know, SMA stands for spinal muscular atrophy, which is an inherited disease that causes the muscles to become weak and waste away. People with SMA lose a specific type of nerve cell in the spinal cord, which controls the muscles, like tells the body to move. When we took him on day 5, which is when we got the call, so 24 hours after being home, we took him to the clinic as soon as we hung up with a geneticist. We took him there to confirm what type he had. There's 4 types, and how many copies he had of his backup gene. And she pretty much, he was so symptomatic the day that we took him in that she knew on spot before even getting blood work back that he was probably type 1, which is the most severe, with 2 backup copies. And type 1 children typically show symptoms before 6 months of age, and he showed them at day 5. And so I have shared a video that this was 1 day before he received treatment, which was on day 27. And so day 26, this was the first movement we had ever seen in his, like him even lift his arms. Like looking back, it's just crazy to know like how far he has came, but that was the very first day that we'd even seen movement at all from him. And also, as you can see, the belly breathing, which is a huge thing in SMA kiddos as well.
So I can't imagine what that journey, and so few number of days, so much happened and so much changed for you all and for your family. And we'll share in just a moment kind of how Waylon's doing today and kind of some of the progress that he's made. But in those months in between, for you, kind of one of the first things that you did was connect to other people. So would love to have you share a little bit about some of your experiences connecting early on. Who did you connect with? And what was sort of the impact of that, connecting with people in your community?
One of the big things that stuck out to me was I follow Cure SMA, which is a huge page regarding the disease, and a huge foundation that is very helpful. And one of the things that they had shared in August, because SMA Awareness Month is in August, one of the things they had shared was a challenge to light up your city. And I thought, oh my gosh, how is this going to be possible? But I'm going to go for it. And I was able to come in contact with our city's mayor, his assistant. I was able to speak with her. I explained why I was wanting to do what I was wanting to do. I explained the severity of this disease and, how it is still so rare. But, you even bring it up to some doctors and they're like, what is that? Like, they don't know. So I was explaining to her the severity of the disease and why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And they allowed me to have the second week of August, Friday and Saturday, to light up the bridge in Cure SMA color. So we lit it up orange and purple. And also every single year, the second Saturday in August, they do a candlelight vigil for those that we've lost to this disease and those that are still fighting. And so it was kind of cool because we were able to have the bridge lit up at the same time that we did the vigil that night. And with it being such a short notice, it was a very good turnout. I didn't even expect, I made a Facebook event like that week. And I actually was able to come in touch with 2 SMA families that showed up, one about 45 minutes away from us and one that currently lives in the same city as us.
That's amazing. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on because you had that thought of how is this even going to happen? And for others that may be thinking that too, kind of how did you make that happen? What were the things that you did to sort of advocate within your community to really get to this point?
Well,
Who did you reach out to, and how did that really happen?
well, I thought it was going to be, like I said, I thought it was going to be a lot harder than what it was. I had actually reached out to a family member that once worked for the city. And I said, hey, you know me, I'm always advocating and I'm always doing this and I'm always doing that. I'm like, I need to get in touch with someone that I can talk to regarding Waylon's disease and how we can get it more known in our city and eventually state level. And so she passed me on to the right person. And like I said, it went a lot faster. There was a few days of silence where I was like, okay, what are we doing? Like, is this going to happen? And she responded back and we were able to get that done. And another thing that I had let her know that I'm working on currently is being able to declare SMA Awareness Month in the month of August in a city level and eventually state level, which will require an event or something to that sort, like a walk, to be organized in order to get a proclamation of declaring August SMA Awareness Month in our city and state.
That's something definitely big to work for, and awesome that you're doing that. And also maybe you could elaborate a little bit on how has this helped you? So this outreach that you've done and this connecting with others, in your community, and the 2 families that you were able to connect with through this, kind of how has that changed things for you or helped you, or what's been important about that for you?
In the beginning, like looking back now, like 9 months ago, I never thought I'd be in this spot now. I never thought I'd be sharing my story with Expecting Health, Babies First. Yesterday we just recently had a conference with a company on behalf of Novartis, which is where our son got his treatment for. And we were able to share our story with them. Looking back 9 months ago, like I said, in the position that I was in, just getting the diagnosis, going through postpartum, all of this new stuff being brought at us, I didn't think that this is where I would be now. And it's really helped. I always let people know that I have came in contact with others that have heard about SMA. Hey, let them know that they can always reach out to me. I know I was that person at first where when I was told by others, like, hey, we know this SMA family, would you like to come in contact with them? I wasn't the one to do that. I was still in that grieving state. And that was something that I had let the conference team know yesterday. I had said, they had asked that question, like if I reached out to anybody when I received his diagnosis, and I explained, and I let them know. I think it was more of the fact that I was just grieving, and I was so focused on so many other things as far as getting insurance approval for such an expensive drug and still learning about it all, that it just wasn't my time to reach out yet. And then after, a few months, and after we got his treatment to stop the progression, because you're just sitting here day by day as your child's getting weaker because he doesn't have his treatment yet. And it was just a good feeling after he got that treatment that just kind of let you relax. You still don't know how it's going to be, but you can relax. And I was able to then reach out, and I had the clinic reach out. They're the ones that actually reached out to me in order to get in contact with Expecting Health and get on the ambassador program. And after that took off, I'm always advocating. I'm always saying, I'm always sharing on social media all the importance of this disease, and any rare disease. Newborn screening is so important, and especially for those that are test positive for a rare disease. It can stop, for Waylon, for his circumstance, if he didn't show symptoms when he was born, he had up until 6 months to show symptoms. There's a possibility that, hey, if we would have been able to get treatment before he even showed symptoms, he could have met every milestone. But once they're symptomatic, it's hard to tell what direction it's going to go in.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how Waylon is doing today. Obviously after he's been through something like that and big treatment, what's he like today?
He is blowing everybody out of the water. He has 3 treatments a week. So he has occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy every morning. And not every morning, but Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And he's just, every week the therapists are saying to me, Jessica, this is so unbelievable, because his physical therapist has been in that field for 35 years, and she had SMA kiddos before treatment was around. So in the natural history of SMA, it's always a decline was always expected before treatment was, around, and he just keeps progressing day by day. We were told at the beginning, once the children get the treatment, that typically parents notice new things every single week, and that's where we're at. I feel like we're finally catching up. We were told, there'd be a few months where he could be behind because he was so symptomatic at birth, but like I told my significant other last night, I said, I think we're finally to the point where we're catching up, and we're catching up quickly. just as simple as bringing the hands to the mouth or being able to bring his feet all the way up to his mouth and do things like that. It's like, I never thought from the day that I got this diagnosis that I'd be seeing this today.
It really is. I mean, I've said this to you many times, and I'll share here as well. I think, it's extremely helpful to hear more about your journey because, as you know, and as I know many on the call know, SMA is one of the newer conditions to be added to newborn screening. And to your point, 5 years ago, the community of SMA looked different, and the options and opportunities that were available for families were different at that time. And so I think it's just a really incredible example of how newborn screening really can change an experience for a family. So we appreciate you sharing so much about Waylon and your journey through this. So the last question that I have for you before we kind of switch over to sharing with Liz is just, what advice would you give to other families or to others who are supporting families in terms of connecting? Kind of what advice would you give to help others connect, either at the local level, at the regional level, or even at the national level, like you've done?
Well, first and foremost, one is always advocate for your child. That, I think, with me being such a big advocator, that is what has made me go forward and made me reach out to I've reached out to the Otteroo company. That was the very first person that we had made contact with and shared our story with. Cure SMA sent us a package, and it had the swim device in it. It's called an Otteroo, and it goes around the neck. And our first thoughts were, oh no, we're going to put him in this, and because he had absolutely no head control at the very start of this. Which, seeing these pictures, that's what's amazing, is zero head control at the very beginning of all this. And we thought, oh no, we're just going to put him in this Otteroo and he's going to sink. His head's going to go right through it. He's not going to move. And it blew us away. It came in our SMA care package. And so then I had reached out to Otteroo and said, I think this is important for any parents that have any disability with a weaker kid to know not to be afraid to do this, because, we were like so hesitant, like, oh my gosh, but we made sure we were right there with him. But I feel like that water therapy, and that has helped him so much, that I wanted to tell them, I wanted to share the story and let them know not to be, to go for it, because it really has helped him. And then from there, I got in touch with Expecting Health, and then I was able to get a hold of our city's mayor, and she had let me know the kind of the ins and outs of how I'll need to move forward on declaring SMA Awareness Month in August. And we've also been able to, this year was our first year, obviously, because it's the first time knowing about SMA. We attended one of the nation's largest walks in Carmel, Indiana, for SMA. And we were able, our team alone was able to raise $4,545. And I think I got an email last month, because they're still continuing the fundraising until the end of November. They had raised $105,000.
Amazing. Incredible. We will have a time at the end of the webinar to ask questions of our families. But if anybody is listening and does have a question, feel free to post into the chat box as well, and Jessica can respond there, but we'll have some time at the end as well. So Jessica, thank you. I learn something new every time. I am fortunate enough to get to hear a little bit more about your journey. So I thank you so much for sharing all that you have about yourself and Waylon along the way. So I am going to excuse me, transition here to just share a little bit more and introduce Liz Carter, who's going to be sharing her experiences as well. And again, with kind of the focus on the importance of sharing your story and the different places that, as a family who has navigated newborn screening and beyond, I think, Liz, your experiences really highlight the importance and the benefits of sharing your story in different ways, and the impact that that can truly have on changing the newborn screening system. And so with that, let me just share a quote that Liz has also recently shared with us. So while our family is grateful for newborn screening, we also hope to see changes in the system that allow for more babies to be identified and diagnosed at birth. We have become advocates for our son and for so many others like Elliott who have genetic conditions, but that are not caught at birth. It is our hope that continuous review of the newborn screening system, along with improvements, be made so that no other family has to experience the pain of almost losing a child. So with that, Liz, I am going to invite you to just share a little bit with us about Elliott's journey and your journey as a family through his diagnosis.
Hey everybody, and thanks to Mariana and Expecting Health for having me today. My son Elliott, the little blondie that's next to me in the picture, he was a beautiful, healthy baby at birth, had just a normal infancy, really. And at age 2.5, we had been on a family beach trip one summer for the week, and we came home from the trip and Elliott got sick. And so we thought, it's just a normal virus. It'll run its course, no big deal. And hours went by, days went by, and Elliott kept getting worse. And so at that point, we took him into the ER and we told the doctors something is wrong. We need to make sure we run every test we can run because we don't know what's going on, but something's wrong. And so that's what we did. And that led to a 29-day stay in the ICU for Elliott. Doctors started running tests and they discovered that Elliott was having seizures pretty much around the clock. And ultimately that was a result of pretty extensive clotting throughout the brain. And that had also resulted in a stroke. And so at that time, doctors sat us down and said, we may lose Elliott to this. It's very serious and we may never know why. And, those are words that no parent ever wants to hear. But we had no choice but to keep moving forward. And thankfully, about halfway into our hospital stay, doctors sat us down again. And they said, we think we know what's going on with Elliott. We think he has a rare metabolic condition that's genetic, and it's called homocystinuria. And the little sticky notes you see here, that's me taking notes as the doctors are talking, trying to gather and capture all of this information. But they said, yeah, we think that he's got this rare disease and it is treatable. And so, at that moment, we were thrilled. A lot of experiences with families in the newborn screening system is they get a phone call when their baby's a few days old, like Jessica did, and they hear this devastating news that their baby has a rare disorder. Well, our experience was we were overjoyed to have this diagnosis. If we had had this diagnosis at birth, we could have begun treating Elliott from the very beginning and not found ourselves in the position we were in. So from there, we jumped right into treatment, changed Elliott's diet radically. For those of you who don't know what homocystinuria is, as we did not either, Elliott lacks the ability to break down an amino acid that he gets through food called methionine. And so that turns into homocysteine, which after a lot of buildup can cause devastating effects like clotting is one thing. With treatment, Elliott turned around pretty quickly with therapy and lots of visits to specialists and lots of changes, but we were just grateful for a diagnosis.
So there's just so much there. And I know you and I have talked a lot about kind of immediately after that, it became really important for you, like you said, to sort of get information and increase your knowledge. And through that, kind of connecting and sharing your experience with others. So maybe if you could just share a little bit about why is sharing your story important to you? And what does that really mean to you to engage in the newborn screening system?
So first of all, my dog is barking, so I'm going to apologize for that. Let me just kind of walk and talk. But so newborn screening awareness is really important to us for a lot of different reasons. If I was going to mention, I recently actually read through all 215 pages of Elliott's medical records from the time of his hospital stay. And time again in the records, as doctors are grasping and, grappling and trying to figure out what's going on with Elliott, you see them mention the possibility of an inborn error of metabolism. But then they quickly dismiss it because they say, well, his newborn screening results were normal. So I think sharing Elliott's story for me is so important, because there is a common misconception that if a disease is on the newborn screening panel, a normal result means that a condition is ruled out later if symptoms present. So I think my biggest hope through sharing our story is just raising awareness that there's still room for improvements within the system so that more babies get diagnosed at birth.
Well, you have definitely, I think, done everything you know how to do just that. And you've definitely shared your story and advocated in a variety of ways. So we'd love for you to share a little bit about your experiences, specifically sharing your story in a very targeted way. And so, yeah, I'll would love to turn it over to you to kind of share some of those experiences and who you've shared your story with, and what the impacts have been.
Yeah, so actually one of my first time sharing Elliott's newborn screening story was with the Advisory Committee on Heritable Disorders in Newborns and Children. And this is the committee that governs all things newborn screening and has the authority and ability to propose changes and improvements to the screening. So needless to say, for me, this was an opportunity that was amazing to speak to an audience that holds the power to implement improvements in the system. So I wanted to just tell them about Elliott, share his story to diagnosis, and I wanted them to hear my appreciation for the newborn screening system, because it is a life-saving tool. But I also wanted to make sure that they heard the story of a real baby who was missed at screening and what impact that had on him and his family. So yeah, that was our first time sharing the story. It was a really powerful and empowering experience for me.
And kind of maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on afterwards, sort of how did you feel? Were there any kind of things that happened after doing that? Your change and your confidence in sharing your story, or connections that you made, sort of what happened after?
Yeah, so I think, I just kind of circling back to why sharing your story is important. I think sometimes, we're afraid to share because we feel vulnerable. It can make you feel very raw. But for me, sharing our story has really been part of the healing process. And, it's helped me to build relationships with other families that have had similar experiences, but it's also, I guess, put me in a position where I feel like I can take a really hard and traumatic situation and turn it into something that can drive change within the system.
Which is huge. And it is healing and it is important. So amazing. Okay, well, we want to definitely hear a little bit more as well about some of the other, in addition to speaking with the advisory or at the advisory committee, you've shared your story in a variety of different ways as well. So, maybe you can share a little bit more about some of the other places that you've shared your story, the other groups that you've shared your story with.
Yeah, so first and foremost for me, we connected with our disease specific group, and that's the HCU Network America. While we were in the hospital with Elliott, pretty much the moment after doctors walked out of the door giving us our diagnosis of homocystinuria, I Googled something like groups for homocystinuria or support groups for homocystinuria, and the HCU Network America popped up. So I connected with them, followed them on Facebook, Twitter, all the social media, and just started introducing myself and asking questions to others and connecting with other families and all of that. And that led to the next thing, which led to the next connection, which led to the next connection. So a couple of the ways in which we've shared our story, we've recorded our story online. We've gotten involved with fundraising through our organization, and I've joined the Parent-Patient Advisory Committee to kind of push forward the mission of finding a treatment and all of that. And then, of course, I've gotten to connect with Expecting Health, and recently have signed on to be an ambassador for Expecting Health so that I can help to reach and connect with more families involved in the newborn screening system. I've connected with a biotherapeutic company, and they're called Aglia Biotherapeutics, and we are grateful to them because they are working on a treatment, an enzyme therapy treatment for homocystinuria. And so that's another example of how telling our newborn screening and pathway to diagnosis story can drive life-changing developments, treatments, and hopefully one day a cure.
Well, and I think what both you and Jessica have just highlighted so well, and what's so important is, we always talk about the importance of making sure that families are engaged in every aspect of the system. And I think your journeys and the impact that the work you all have been doing in your communities, but also at the national level, really show the importance of that. And when you and your voice are involved in all aspects, you start to connect with and work with all these different groups of people. And that really is how we can ensure that systems are improved and experiences are improved for families. So I think both of you are incredible examples of how that can be done, but have also shared that it's small steps along the way, and you thought it was going to maybe be harder than it was, and when you start to do it, you realize you can do this, and it is just kind of step by step, and then you start connecting with all of the people. That's when you start to see your impact. So really great. I know a couple more things. Did you want to touch a little bit on? I think maybe you touched on that already, but sorry, I didn't advance the slide. So let's just kind of, wrap up here with, we'd love to hear a little bit more about how Elliott is doing today. So we'll start there.
Yeah, so as you can see in these pictures, Elliott is doing wonderfully today. He's in kindergarten, so he's at school right now, and he is just like any other kid. You would never know by looking at him that he was different. He is funny, he's witty, he's very sassy, and he's a very strong kid. And he recently played flag football this year, which was a proud moment for us, watching him do something that normal kids do. And he was more into entertaining on the sidelines, as you can see, than he was actually playing the game. But he's doing wonderfully today.
Fantastic. And last question for you, similar to Jessica, what advice would you give to other either families or groups of people who are supporting families to encourage them or to help them feel confident in sharing their story?
So a couple of things. I did want to mention, I think before one of the first times I was going to share Elliott's story, I mentioned to somebody that I was nervous. I thought, what if I mess up? And she said to me, it's your story and nobody knows your story better than you. And that really gave me the confidence that I needed to say, okay, I'm just telling our experience. I'm just sharing our story. So that would be one thing. Is this your story? And so you're the best teller of your story. I do want to acknowledge and appreciate the courage, though, and the vulnerability that it does take to share your story, and it can make you feel very raw. And so, everybody's story too is different. And as Jessica mentioned, initially she just wasn't ready to share her story because she was grieving. So, I know that going through a painful experience that most of us involved with the newborn screening system, a lot of us have experienced, you just kind of need to share in your own time, but just know that when you're ready, there are people out there that need to hear your story and will benefit from hearing your story.
Thank you so much. I feel like we could chat with both of you guys for a lot longer. There's so much to learn. So Liz, like with Jessica, thank you so much for being vulnerable and for sharing your story. It does not, go unrecognized here as well. And so we appreciate both of you for being willing to share the specific things that you've done and, tips that others can take away from this as well to engage. And I think, again, what really we learn from these stories and from these experiences is that newborn screening is more than just a test after birth, which is what I think it really often gets described as. And it is a system, it is a complex system. It is a series of experiences that many people are involved with, and families are at the center of that the entire time. And so in these last 5 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes, I wanted to just take a moment to share with this group some of the work that we're doing to really raise awareness and build leadership opportunities within the newborn screening system, specifically for families. And so one of the programs that Expecting Health manages is something called the Newborn Screening Family Education Program, or we often refer to it as Navigate Newborn Screening. And also want to acknowledge and thank our partners at the Health Resources and Services Administration, HRSA, who fund this work. But really the primary goal of this program and of all of the work and effort that we do here is to ensure that all families have equitable access to newborn screening information. Both of you shared in your journeys that you didn't really know a lot about newborn screening. And when you were in a position where you started to learn about newborn screening, you recognized that there was a lot you needed to learn. And as your journeys evolved and as you connected and shared with others, sort of developing that confidence and the skills that, whether you knew you needed or not, and probably didn't know you needed, you found yourself looking for and developing. And so really the work and the vision of Navigate Newborn Screening is to develop these trainings and educational opportunities and resources for families to build that leadership skill set and to really become confident to make changes in the newborn screening system. And so I'll share with you some very specific opportunities that we have available for families to engage. And I know many of you who are joining us today work with newborn screening state programs or work directly with families. And so, whether you're a family listening or whether you work with families, we wanted to just make sure that you all are aware of these opportunities so that, again, beyond the month of September and beyond the efforts that we have to increase and raise awareness in September, we really want to make sure that we continue to build on this great effort and this great work that we've started this month and carry that through the rest of the year and beyond. And so I'll touch on a couple of quick things and then share some resources at the end to stay connected with us so you can also stay in the loop on some of the opportunities that come up as the year progresses. So we'll touch on these things that you see here on the screen. So the first thing I wanted to specifically share about is an opportunity to gain knowledge and leadership skills. And we have, through the Navigate Newborn Screening Program, we have developed a free online curriculum that families can access. It's very simple to log in and access this, and it is free. There are a number of different learning opportunities available in the entire curriculum. There are 5 base courses that cover things like what is newborn screening, sort of understanding the complexity of the newborn screening system and the different groups of stakeholders and individuals that are involved in the newborn screening. And then there's also some training opportunities to develop advocacy and storytelling skills. So as we've heard from both Liz and Jessica, and the first time that families are doing that, there might be some question of how to approach that. And so through this training and online curriculum, we can really work and help families think about sharing their story as they're learning the newborn screening system. And then there's a wealth of resources and additional tools that are also accessible through this training. So anyone can access this. It is geared towards families specifically, and we've shared, and we'll also share in the chat box, the link to enroll in this online curriculum. If you were to sit down and take the entire curriculum in one setting, it takes about 45 minutes. Just, I know sometimes people like to be aware of that, but the great thing about this training is that you can access it at any time from any type of device, and you can take it at your own pace when you're ready for it. So just want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is available for anyone that might be interested. The second thing we wanted to share as an opportunity to continue to stay engaged with this newborn screening work is through our outreach partnership network in the Navigate Newborn Screening Program. A large part how we reach families and ensure that we're making accessible the educational tools that we do have is through our partnership network. And so a number of you I know work with different organizations and work directly with families. And so if you're interested in learning more about the partnership network that we have and the ways in which we work with our partners, we would love to talk with you and share more. And my email is here. We can put that in the chat as well. And please feel free to reach out to me directly. But a few things that I did want to highlight as really good opportunities for those for those groups that are partners with us. And again, this partnership network is ongoing and growing, but a couple of the things that we make available specifically through this network is access to curriculum, like I just mentioned, as well as a number of additional tools and resources that we've developed and that we are continuing to develop. So in addition to online learning modules, we have a number of one-page resources, family-focused videos that help and support families through their newborn screening journey, and much more. And so the partnership network has direct access to those resources, and also is a very integral part in sharing those resources within their own network and ensuring that we're getting those to families so that we can best support. Some other, kind of newer opportunities that I also wanted to touch on with regard to our partnership network. We are looking for ways for partners to connect as well. So we recognize the importance of families connecting with other families. And in that same regard, we also recognize the opportunity for partners to connect with other partners. And so we have established some communication channels to allow our partners to share information with one another. And we're also going to be establishing some what we call community of practice sessions, where participants of our partnership network will have an opportunity to come together and meet as a live group to chat about challenges, barriers, successes within the newborn screening system. And so again, if this is something that you're interested in learning more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And we definitely love working with our partners and know that that is a huge part of what makes success of this program happen. And then last, but definitely not least, we are excited to share with you all today, both Liz and Jessica touched on being a part of our ambassador group, and both of these ladies and others who I see on the call as well, were really, really invaluable in helping us shape what this opportunity could look like. And so we're really excited to be growing our ambassador network, which is specifically for families, to really engage on a deeper level within the newborn screening system as leaders. And so there's really three key pillars or key areas that the ambassador network is going to focus on, and we'll be opening enrollment for any family that's interested in becoming an ambassador. And the three areas that this group will really be focusing in doing, as well as training in these areas, are focusing on building community and connecting with others. So what does that look like? What are the benefits of that? We'll be talking about and developing some leadership curriculums that really center around furthering those leadership skills, specifically around things like advocacy and connecting with others, and even quality improvement practices to get a better sense of what that looks like within the newborn screening system. And then, overall, what this group is really going to be focusing on, our efforts, is increasing awareness around newborn screening. And so that can be through connecting on social media, through a variety of different efforts related to increasing awareness, connecting on the local level, etc. And so this group is going to be meeting quarterly, starting in late October. And we're also planning for a live training session later in the year for this group. And we look forward to, the impact that we know this group is going to have for families, supporting families through the newborn screening system. So again, if you are interested, or if you have families in mind that you think might be interested in becoming an ambassador of the Navigate Newborn Screening Program, we'll be happy to share more information. We have an interest form that you can share with those individuals, or you can email me directly. Looking forward to kicking that off as well. So with that, I think we have just a few moments. If there are questions, we definitely wanted to open it up, and I'm actually going to stop sharing at this point to just invite anyone that's listening in. If you all have questions that you want to ask Jessica or Liz, please feel free to unmute yourself and do so. You're also welcome to put your questions in the chat box. And yeah, we will open it up for some questions in the last few minutes that we have. Let me see. While we're waiting to see if anybody has any in the chat box, I will pose a question, Jessica and Liz, to you. And hopefully this isn't putting you on the spot, but one thing I thought of as you guys were both sharing your experiences are, what were maybe some of the barriers that either of you experienced in either connecting with other families or sharing your story or the work that you were doing? And how did you overcome those barriers?
Well, I will say that in my situation, I was extremely fortunate that my son's disorder has an established disease group. I can't imagine if I were going to start the journey, by myself, and there wasn't like a group that had already formed and kind of come together, navigating through it alone. So I do think, my story is a little unique from some others, because I did have a huge community that was already established to support me the moment I joined, the moment I jumped in and said, hey, I'm new here, I need some guidance. But I do think one boundary or something that, holds some people back is there are some diseases that maybe are more rare than ours and simply haven't established a common group to connect with. So I think not knowing kind of where to look and where to connect initially, if there's not a disease specific group, could be a barrier.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for me is the disease itself affects every single person differently. It would be easier. When I attended an SMA conference this year, the president said something of Cure SMA that stood out to me so much. Is he said, it would be easier to find a cure for this disease if it affected everybody the same way. But you'll talk to one person and you'll hear, they could have got treatment just as early as you did, no symptoms, but doing worse. And then you have your child that is symptomatic on day 5, that is being able to sit unassisted that you never thought you'd see for 5 minutes at his age. So that's one of the biggest things is everyone's story is different and it affects everybody differently.
Absolutely. No, all really, really great points. One other question that I see came up in the chat box. So I think both of you mentioned in your experiences that you were balancing where you were in the grieving process and when you were ready to share your story. So can you maybe speak more to that? And are there specific things that, we as individuals and groups are communicating and reaching out to families, how we can think about really balancing the opportunities and presenting opportunities that are available while understanding and being respectful that, people may be grieving at that time?
When the clinic that we confirmed the diagnosis at, they didn't push it. They didn't push, they knew the state that I was in. I was in tears the day that they were explaining the diagnosis to me and everything like that. They made sure not to push the fact that, hey, there is others out there that can speak with you. But when you are ready, you let us know and we will give you their numbers. I feel like it got easier for me once I told my story once. It became easier during the process to tell it multiple times and to many other places. I feel like if I would have never, got comfortable with telling it that first time, then I wouldn't be where I am. But once you tell it that first time, you get more comfortable. And like Liz said, it is your story. There's no way to mess it up. Nobody knows your story.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Thanks, Jessica. Anything else? So I'm just going to kind of open it up to either of you. Is there anything else that you want to share, or thoughts that you had as advice or tips for helping continue this work and helping other families engage in the newborn screening system? Covered it all.
We covered a lot of ground today.
Sure did. We're going to wrap up then. And obviously, if you think of other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. And one thing I did want to just mention and share, in addition to sharing their experiences and stories here today, both Liz and Jessica have also shared their stories with us in written form. And so if you're interested in reading more about Jessica or Liz, their experiences, Elliott's journey or Waylon's journey, we have those stories available on the Baby's First Test website as well. So happy to share a link there, and you're welcome to go read a little bit more. So while we wrap up, we did want to just end with another poll. We'd love to collect a little bit of information in terms of what you thought and how we can think about future webinars and including family experiences like this in future webinars. So if you don't mind, we have one more poll to wrap things up, and you can share your thoughts with us there. And we also are dropping in the chat box a really short 5-question survey that similarly will kind of help us build on webinars like this and really think about how we can continue to gauge the newborn screening community as as we wrap up September. Hard to believe that it's already almost October 1st. And while we are collecting those, again, I just want to extend an enormous thank you to Jessica and Liz for sharing your stories. And you can see from the many comments, well, hopefully you can see from the many comments that, definitely hearing from you and hearing firsthand what's been helpful, what's been challenging, how we can really think about connecting and sharing in the newborn screening system really, really has been a huge help. And I think some concrete ways that we as a group and as a community can really support one another and continue to, again, build on the efforts from not just this month, but many years of effort to improve, the process and experience for families in newborn screening. So let me give it just a moment to capture the poll. And then I'm also going to share any contact. I think the contact information for myself has been shared in the chat box already, but one last thing for anybody listening in that you can do immediately if you're interested is follow along with us. We have Baby's First Test, Expecting Health, both have various different social media opportunities that you can follow. We post and share a lot of information there. The Navigate Newborn Screening Program has a website on Expecting Health that you can also learn more and gather more information and resources there. We have newsletters that you can join from the website. And so there are a variety of different ways that you can choose to stay connected with us and keep up to date on the number of different newborn screening activities and efforts that we have here. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us directly. And thank you again, Jessica and Liz. Amazing job.